So, you're a medieval king. Congratulations. Maybe. Let's see how long you last. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you're enjoying these slow, sleepy steps through the weirdness of history. And tell me, where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it there? I read every comment. You might be on a train, in bed, or under a blanket somewhere trying not to think about Monday. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Now then, dim your lights. Pull your covers a little closer. Let the sound settle into the room, and let's begin. You wake up to bells. Not gentle chimes or soft birdsong. No. This is the 1300s. It's the clanging of iron bells from the chapel tower below your window, ringing not out of reverence, but out of pure spite. It's 6 in the morning, maybe. No clocks yet, just the noise. You're in bed. Well, sort of. Technically, it's a bed. 4 thick posts carved from oak, draped in fabric so heavy it could survive a siege. The mattress is stuffed with straw, feathers, and probably at least one rat who pays rent in fleas. The blanket on top smells faintly of wet wool and unspoken royal secrets. You blink. You're alone. That's rare. Normally your wife, your consort, your favorite mistress, or one of your 8 royal hunting dogs would be somewhere in this bed, taking up most of the space. But this morning, just you and a draft. A very pointed, deliberate draft sneaking in under the door, like it has a political agenda. You swing your legs over the side of the bed. Regret immediately follows. Your knees pop like firewood. Your ankles feel like they've been politely disassembled and reassembled incorrectly by a team of drunk masons. You're 38, which is, let's be honest, elderly in this time period. You're a walking miracle. You should get a feast just for waking up. Maybe you will. You're the king after all. You ring a bell to summon your attendants. It's a small bronze thing that makes the same noise whether you're asking for a hot bath or declaring war. You shake it twice and wait. The sound echoes down a hallway somewhere. You hear one servant trip, a second one sigh. Footsteps shuffle toward you like they're negotiating with fate. A boy named Anselm enters. He's 12, underpaid and already developing back pain from carrying royal night chamber pots. He bows so deeply he nearly headbutts the floor. "Good morning, Your Majesty," he mumbles. You grunt. He takes this as permission to approach. He carries your robe, which smells like lavender, wet stone, and wealth. He helps you into it, hands trembling. You're not terrifying, but the crown is. Speaking of which, it waits on your dressing table. Gold, heavy, slightly crooked from being dropped that one time during a feast. You remember, you'd had 6 cups of wine and tried to toast yourself. The crown didn't forgive you. You glance at it now and feel the same old weight in your chest. Not from the gold. From what it means. The crown doesn't care that your knees hurt, that your brother-in-law wants your throne, that your people haven't seen a tax reduction in 3 reigns. The crown just waits, silent, judgmental, and always a little dusty. Anselm clears his throat. "Shall I fetch the royal physician to inspect your foot, sire?" You look down. Yes. Your royal foot is swollen. Again, red, unforgiving. Probably the venison. Probably everything, but you wave him off. Later. For now, you shuffle toward the window, robe dragging behind you, crown still untouched. You look out at your kingdom, at the mist curling over the hills, the rooftops glistening with frost, the town waking up beneath your rule. You sip from a goblet left out from last night. It's lukewarm wine and regret. And somehow, despite the gout, the loneliness, the cold, and the endless weight of decision, you still feel like a king. It's not even breakfast, and you already feel like you've lived an entire reign. Anselm is still hovering, nervously brushing lint off your robe that may or may not be alive. You don't stop him. He needs to feel useful, and you need someone to absorb your quiet royal dread. You finally give in, and sit down in the dressing chair, the one with the lion carved into the back, and the seat that creaks ominously every time you shift. You suspect it's a metaphor. 2 more attendants arrive, this time with hot water and oils. They bow. One murmurs, "For the face, Your Majesty." You lift an eyebrow. "What's wrong with my face?" They freeze, eyes wide. Nothing, sire, just morning dew. You nod slowly. Morning dew is now court language for bags under your eyes and a beard that's been trying to unionize. You endure the ritual. A damp cloth, oil that smells like crushed rosemary and regret, and a blade so dull it might as well be ceremonial. They shave you like you're a relic, delicate with reverence and zero urgency. You have to sit perfectly still while trying not to sneeze, sigh, or twitch. You're the king. But in this moment, you're at the mercy of 3 men with nothing to lose and 1 sharp object. After, the final layer, the crown. You don't put it on yet. You just hold it. It steps heavier today. Then the door opens, and in comes your Lord Chancellor, voice already mid-sentence, scrolls in hand, powdered wig askew, like it survived a minor storm. He doesn't wait for an invitation. He never does. His name is Everard, and he's the most efficient man you've ever met, and the most exhausting. We have 6 petitions from the guilds, 3 border complaints, a goat theft in Alderwick that somehow escalated to accusations of sorcery, and the bishop is waiting to see if you'll approve a new chapel roof made entirely of lead. You haven't even had breakfast. You wave vaguely. Bring me the goat one first. He blinks. Truly, you nod. You know exactly what you're doing. You want to delay the big stuff. You want to read about the goat. Maybe laugh. Maybe remember what it feels like to be a human with curiosity instead of a king with ulcers. You're led into the royal breakfast chamber. It's technically called the sunroom, though it receives exactly 2 hours of filtered light through a slit in the stone wall. The long table is already set. Pewter plates, bread that could chip teeth, a roast pheasant that has been roasted again for good measure, and your food taster Benedict, already chewing, nodding gravely. No poison, he says with his mouth full. You don't even flinch. You just take your seat at the end of the table, miles away from anyone else, and pick up your knife. Breakfast as a king is not peaceful. There are heralds reading the names of people waiting for an audience. There's a scribe, scribbling every bite you take for the official royal diet log. Why? You're not sure. There's someone announcing today's weather as though it's news from a battlefield. Fog approaching from the east, possible rain near the barley fields. Wilfred the steward brings a tray of jams, bows, and asks if you'd prefer gooseberry, blackberry, or the royal favorite, onion and plum. You say nothing for a moment. Just stare at him. He wilts. You choose gooseberry. You always do. But he has to ask every single morning. By the end of breakfast, your shoulders are tight, your foot is throbbing, and your mind has already fought 6 imaginary battles and 1 none. But you rise, because the crown is waiting, and kings don't get to rest. They just get better at pretending they did. You step into the great hall like you're about to go to war, because in a way you are, not with swords, not with horses and banners, but with words, with requests, with complaints delivered by people in robes who haven't done a day of physical labor in their lives, but still talk like they've carried the kingdom on their backs. You sit at the high-backed throne at the head of the hall and try not to groan too loudly. The throne itself is terrible, not metaphorically. It is quite literally a wooden torture device with cushions so thin they might be painted on. The armrests dig into your ribs. The back is carved with lions that seem to judge your posture. You shift once, regret it instantly. The room fills with voices, murmurs, footsteps, the sound of men in boots trying to sound more important than they are. The courtiers begin to line up. A man from the fishing guild bows and presents a scroll. He talks about boat taxes, then something about eel rights. You're not sure. You nod politely while your mind drifts to the pheasant you didn't finish at breakfast. Willet, your royal falconer, appears next. He's still got feathers in his beard, and a look on his face like he just remembered something very important, but refuses to say it. Your Majesty, the hawks have taken a liking to the Chancellor's wigs. I believe it's a divine sign. You blink at him. A sign of what? He considers this. The collapse of judicial vanity? You sigh. Tell them to aim lower next time. Next comes a dispute between 2 barons about a hill. One says it's his because he peed on it when he was 12. The other says it's his because his father died near it. You resist the urge to call for a coin toss, and instead ask for maps. They don't have maps, they have feelings. The debate goes nowhere. You send them to discuss it with your scribe in the hall closet until someone cries. Everard, your chancellor, returns like a wasp in human form. Sire, we still must address the matter of Prince Baldwin's request for additional lands. You inhale through your nose. Baldwin, your cousin, known for hunting inside monasteries and calling every woman he meets wench, even if she's holding a sword. Tell him I'll give him land when he stops setting fire to other people's. The bishop enters next, robes so long they've collected half the castle's dust. He bows with one hand and adjusts his beard with the other. Sire, the chapel roof leaks onto the altar. We propose melting down 3 silver candlesticks to fund repairs. You raise an eyebrow. Which candlesticks? He hesitates. The ones gifted by your late mother. You smile without humor. Then I propose you find a new roof and keep your hands off my mother's candlesticks. You don't get up, you don't shout, you don't storm out, but the room falls quiet anyway. That's the power of the crown. You can wound with a whisper. At midday, you finally rise stiff, sore, drained. You're ushered to a side room for a moment of reprieve. A steward offers wine. You accept without speaking. You sit in a smaller chair, less ornate, more merciful, and drink in slow gulps. The fire crackles nearby. You stare into it. This is your kingdom, this hall, these voices, this noise. And though it exhausts you, though it gnaws at your patience like a bored terrier, you belong to it, just as it belongs to you. You remain in the solar longer than planned. The fire has softened your joints a little, and the wine, imported, sharp, expensive enough to offend the peasants, is taking the edge off your temper. You swirl it in the goblet like it's going to give you answers. It doesn't. It never does. The room is quiet, except for the fire and the sound of someone sneezing in the hallway and pretending they didn't. You think about ignoring the afternoon session entirely, just not showing up, pulling your robe tighter, drawing the curtains, and claiming a noble illness. The king has a humoral imbalance, Everard would say. He requires rest, leeches, and boiled roots. No one would question it. Not publicly. But you don't. Because kings don't get to disappear. Not unless they want their cousin Baldwin to slide onto the throne while they nap. You stand, slowly, one vertebra at a time. Your knees sound like a basket of walnuts being stepped on. You wince. You're starting to suspect the royal physician is avoiding you out of professional shame. You may be the only king in history with a limp caused by ceremonial dancing. You pull your robe tighter and step back into the corridor. The castle is buzzing now. Servants bustle past like bees with bad posture. A messenger from the north has arrived and looks like he's been dragged here by a mule and the will of spite. He smells like wet leather and anxiety. He bows so low his cap nearly catches fire from the torch beside him. A report from the border, sire. You take it, unroll it. It's smeared, damp, and mostly legible. There's trouble again. There's always trouble. Bandits, this time. Or rebels. Or just hungry farmers who got tired of watching tax collectors ride past on horses fat from the king's grain. You stare at the paper. You know what Everard will suggest. Send troops. Show strength. Make an example. But you remember what your mother once said. You only scare people into silence, not into loyalty. You fold the scroll and tuck it away. Later. For now, the council chamber awaits. It's worse than usual. Everyone's talking at once. Maps are unfurled. Coins are scattered on tables to represent troops. Someone's arguing about harvest projections. Someone else is mad about hay. Hay. You close your eyes briefly. Breathe. Imagine you're anywhere else. On a boat. In a tavern. Even in a muddy field as a common man. If it meant 5 minutes of peace. You raise a hand. Slowly. The room quiets. No need to yell. Your silence has more power than their noise. We will send riders north, you say, but with grain, not swords. Let them eat first. If they burn it, then we march. Everard bristles. The bishop frowns, but no one speaks. And just like that, you've bought yourself a little more time, a little more quiet, and maybe, just maybe, a little more sleep tonight. The meeting ends with a slow unravel. Council members shuffle out like monks after a sermon, all pretending they weren't just 2 minutes away from drawing swords over wheat tariffs. Everard lingers, of course. He always does. You give him the usual vague wave, the universal royal signal for leave. Me alone, but pretend I dismissed you formally. He nods like it was his idea, and disappears down the corridor, already muttering about parchment. You step into the library, one of the few places in the castle where the silence feels like yours. The fire's low, the shelves are tall, and the smell of old books and dust and forgotten promises hangs thick in the air. You love this room, not because you read often. Half these books are in Latin, and the other half were copied by monks with terrible handwriting and strong opinions, but because it's still, and stillness is rare. You pull a scroll from the shelf. You don't even look at the title. You just sit in the window seat, the one that overlooks the south orchard, and pretend you're here because you have scholarly intentions. Really, you just want to sit and not be asked a question. You unroll the scroll and let your eyes blur over it. Something about irrigation, possibly poetry, hard to say. Down below you see the orchard keeper chasing a goose with a broom. You watch, expressionless, as the goose wins. Again, you suspect the goose may be possessed. You make a mental note to bring it up with the bishop, right after you approve his roof of silver-plated hubris. Your stomach growls, loudly. And now you realize you never finished breakfast, or lunch, or anything that wasn't politically seasoned. You think about calling for something simple. Bread, cheese, a boiled egg, that doesn't come with a garnish the size of a boat sail. But you already know what would happen. 5 servants, a silver platter, 3 courses, applause. You stay hungry, that's easier. There's a knock on the frame of the door. It's Tilda, one of your oldest attendants. She's been with the castle longer than some of the stones. She doesn't bow, she doesn't need to. She just gives you a look that says you've been in here too long, and I know it. In her hand, a small plate, bread, cheese, and 1 fig, slightly bruised. She sets it on the table beside you without a word. You glance up. Thank you. She grunts, then walks out. You sit there a while longer, chewing slowly, staring out at the orchard, scroll still open beside you like a prop in a play you no longer care to perform. You are still wearing the crown. You take it off, set it beside the plate, and just breathe. Afternoons as king are strange. You're not expected to do anything specific, just be available, which is, in its own way, worse than being busy. You're a statue with a pulse. A man dressed in velvet who exists to be stared at, interrupted, and occasionally bowed to. Most days you wander the quieter wings of the castle, not because you have business there, but because it's one of the few places where people don't find you. Today you end up in the gallery. It's long, cold, and lined with portraits of your ancestors, most of whom look like they died of either boredom or gout. One of them, your great-grandfather Alaric, is painted holding a scepter with one hand and a squirrel with the other. No one knows why. You've asked. No one answers. You pause before your own unfinished portrait. It's been stuck in progress for 6 months. The painter is afraid to finish the eyes. They change too much, he said once. You're not sure if it was an excuse or a compliment. Maybe both. Right now, it just means your painted face has a very detailed nose and a disturbingly blank stare. You keep walking. The guards nod as you pass. One sneezes and tries to bow at the same time, nearly hitting the stone wall. You nod, pretending not to notice. It's strange how exhausting it can be to be noticed everywhere and still not really seen. You step out into the small courtyard. The sun's low, and it spills gold across the cobbles like someone spilled treasure and didn't bother picking it up. You sit on a bench, one that creaks, because of course it does. Everything in this castle creaks, including your knees. A child runs by, someone's son. He doesn't bow, doesn't stop, just laughs and chases a stick like it's a dragon. You watch him, remembering a time when you did the same, before crowns, before councils, before waking up every day with a list of people who need you to decide what kind of bread they're allowed to sell in their village. You close your eyes for a moment, just to listen. There sits a bird, in the ivy above the wall. A soft breeze moving through the trees. Distant clang of training swords down in the yard. And for a fleeting moment, no decisions to make. No titles, no duty. Just you. Sitting, breathing, being. The moment doesn't last. Footsteps approach. A page, panting. Your Majesty the steward says the Duchess of Varn has arrived early. She sips waiting in the antechamber with 2 swans and a poet. You open one eye. Did you say swans? The page nods. Yes, sire. One sips wearing a ribbon. You sigh. Stand. Brush off the crumbs from your lap. Pick up the weight of your title again like it's a second cloak. Fine, you mutter. Let's go meet the birds. You walk through the stone halls toward the antechamber. Your robe whispering along the floor behind you like a very judgmental shadow. The steward greets you at the door with a bow so deep you fear he might never return upright. She's in a cheerful mood, he says, voice low, and she's brought gifts. You squint at him. Is one of them silence? He pretends not to hear. Inside, the Duchess of Varn is already holding court, despite being very much in your court. She's draped in furs thick enough to smother a small horse, and she's surrounded by an entourage of nervous servants, and one poet who looks like he's lost a bet. The swans, yes, 2 of them, are tethered by delicate cords of silk, and seem remarkably unfazed by being indoors. One is pecking the other. The other is plotting revenge. Your Majesty. The Duchess booms, her voice coated in the honeyed arrogance of someone who owns more land than she's ever seen. How radiant you look. The sunlight favors your face today. You consider telling her the sunlight isn't even in this room. Instead, you bow your head slightly. Your Grace. I trust your journey was interesting. She cackles. One of the swans refused the river ferry, had to ride in the carriage, like a countess. The poet, standing at her elbow, coughs into his sleeve and mutters something about avian nobility. You glance at him. He wears a velvet cap and the vacant look of a man who has survived 3 readings of his own work in the same afternoon. Do you bring word from Varn, you ask, already regretting it. She waves her hand like the subject is beneath her. Trade is steady, grain is fat. My nephew is considering monkhood, and I've discovered a new spice. Red as blood, smells like burnt garlic. Very fashionable. She says this as though she invented it. She probably believes she did. She gestures to the poet. Recite, he sighs like a man being marched to the gallows, and opens a scroll. Ahem, Cito, Ode to a King, in the style of a dove. After a dream of turnips. You raise a hand. Let sex skip that part. The Duchess laughs again. He's shy, she says, patting your arm like you're a wayward child, instead of the man who could, with a single nod, have her banquet hall filled with goats. Now, Your Majesty, I simply must talk with you about expanding the Eastern Road. You see, my swans need a smoother ride. You stare at her for a beat. Is this a metaphor, or are we still talking about actual swans? Both, she says brightly. An hour passes. You listen to her make demands, offer gossip, flirt badly, and misquote scripture. You sip wine that you don't remember asking for. You nod at all the right moments and resist the urge to fake a fainting spell just to escape the room. Eventually, she stands. You've been such a gracious host, she says, clearly preparing to talk for another 20 minutes. But you rise, take her hand and bow. Always a pleasure, Duchess. May your return journey be uneventful, for you and your birds. She beams, clearly taking it as a compliment. As she leaves, the poet mouths, "Thank you," at you. You consider adopting him out of pity. And just like that, the room is quiet again. Well, except for the swan that left a message on your rug. You stare at it. Then look up. This is still better than the council meeting. You don't go straight back to the council chamber after the Duchess departs. You need a moment. A long one, maybe a month. You walk slowly down the corridor, past the tapestries that depict your ancestors winning battles you're not sure ever happened. One of them shows a man, possibly your great-uncle, strangling a wolf with one hand and kissing a nun with the other. You stare at it for a while, trying to decide if you're impressed or just deeply concerned. The castle is quieter now. Late afternoon has a way of softening everything. Voices, footsteps, even ambition. The servants are more tired, the guards more relaxed, the stone corridors echo less. Everyone's just waiting for supper. You slip through a side door and take the back way up to the North Tower. It's rarely visited, too many stairs, not enough gold. Which is exactly why you like it. Up here the wind hums against the arrow slits, and the dust doesn't care what title you wear. There's an old chair by the window, and for a moment you let yourself sit without poise. You lean back, let your arms fall, let your stomach expand like it hasn't had to impress anyone since breakfast. From this height, the kingdom looks unreal, like a painting. The town is laid out in soft lines and crooked chimneys. The fields beyond wave like a worn green blanket, and far in the distance, a thin ribbon of river glints in the fading light. It's beautiful, and it makes you feel something dangerously close to small, which is oddly nice. There's a knock at the door, a soft one. You consider ignoring it, but you know the rhythm. It's Tilda. No one else knocks, like they're testing the wall for secrets. She enters without waiting. Of course, she sets down a wooden cup on the windowsill. Warm cider, stolen from the steward's private stash. You raise an eyebrow. You steal for me now? She shrugs. I steal back for you. It was yours to begin with. He just didn't know it. You nod. Take the cup. Sip. It's sweet, sharp, and laced with cinnamon. Your eyes close for a second longer than expected. She watches you, arms crossed. You haven't eaten properly in 2 days, your legs swollen again, and you smell like formal diplomacy. You glance at her. That bad? You smell like ribboned poultry and lies. You chuckle, but it catches in your throat. It's not that funny, not really. She softens, just a little. You don't have to be steel every hour of the day, you know. You look out the window. If I step not steel, I bend. Maybe, she says, but you've been brittle lately. You don't answer. You just keep sipping the cider and watching the sun pull its last gold streak across the world you're responsible for. Before she leaves, she adds, "There sips soup at the fire tonight. I'll bring some. And if you try to give it to the dog again, I'll make sure your robes shrink." She steps halfway down the stairs before you manage a quiet thank you, not as a king, just as someone who needed a minute. You stay in the North Tower longer than planned. The cider warms you from the inside out, and the silence feels earned, not forced. Outside, the last threads of daylight slip behind the hills, taking with them whatever pressure was still clinging to your shoulders. Down below, the torches are being lit one by one. It looks like the kingdom is exhaling. You should go back. But instead, you stay seated in the old chair, rubbing your thumb along the rim of the cider cup. It's smooth and worn, like it's been passed through more hands than the throne itself. You wonder how many kings have sat here before you. Probably none. Most preferred the solar or the war room. You've always liked the places people forget about. You close your eyes for a moment and let your mind wander, not to war or taxes or cousins who think they'd make a better monarch, but to the first time you walked into the throne room, not as a king, as a boy. You were 13, maybe 14, wearing boots that didn't fit and a belt that kept sliding. The hall felt impossibly large back then. The crown seemed like a joke, something that belonged to a storybook or a coin. You remember thinking, there's no way I'll survive this. You were right, in a way. That version of you didn't survive. He grew into someone else. You open your eyes and glance down at your hands. The rings feel heavier now. The calluses from your training days are still faintly there, ghosts beneath soft skin. Your fingers used to hold a bow. Now they hold a scepter and shake from too much writing. From behind the stone wall, you hear faint music. A lute, maybe? Someone practicing, not well. Probably Aldred, the stable boy with dreams of becoming a bard. The tune stumbles, repeats, stumbles again. You smile, not because it's good, but because it's honest. There's no performance in it, just trying. There's something comforting about that. You finally rise, joints protesting as always. You're not old, but your bones have questions. You stretch, sigh, Set the empty cup down gently on the sill. It'll be gone by morning. Tilda sees to everything. You descend the tower slowly, cloak trailing behind like the ghost of your younger self. The castle is glowing. Now candles in alcoves, hearths burning low, the distant echo of someone laughing in the servants' quarters. You envy them sometimes. Not their work, but their ease with each other. At the bottom of the stairs, a scribe nearly walks into you. He stammers, bows, drops a scroll, picks it up, bows again. You wave him off gently. Don't sit worry. I was never here. He smiles, a real one, then scurries off. And for the first time today, you feel less like a king, and more like a person wearing a crown that finally fits. The castle changes at night. It exhales. The stones seem warmer, the torches lower, the footsteps softer. You make your way through the halls not like a monarch surveying his domain, but like someone slipping back into something familiar. You don't need a procession. You don't want one. The guards nod but don't follow. Tilda must have told them. It's that kind of night. You pass the chapel, quiet now except for a single flickering candle and the faint scent of old incense and even older confessions. Someone's inside, whispering a prayer that probably has nothing to do with you. And for once, that's a relief. You enter the lower hearth hall, a tucked-away chamber near the kitchens, where the air smells like ash, onions, and the past. It's where you go when you want to eat without being watched. No trumpets, no feast, no taster waiting to die heroically. Just a bowl, a spoon, and enough space to sit without needing to sit up straight. Tilda's already there. Of course. She gestures to the seat closest to the fire and hands you a bowl before you even say anything. It's hot, thick, and full of things you can actually name. You eat in grateful silence, letting the warmth of the broth chase the chill from your spine. Still wearing the crown, she says eventually. You reach up, startled, and then laugh. It's become such a part of you that you forget it's there. You pull it off and set it on the bench beside you. It looks oddly small now, like something a child might pretend with. Tilda pours something dark and strong into a second cup and hands it to you. Careful, she warns. It bites on the way down. You sip. It does. But it also numbs your gums in a comforting way. You raise the cup in her direction. You could rule, you know. She snorts. I already do. You're just the figurehead. You nod. You're not entirely sure she's joking. Willett appears not long after, somehow managing to track soup by scent alone. Ah, royal leftovers, he says, settling in beside the fire and stretching like a cat that survived too much weather. Tilda, you absolute goddess of broth. Your soup makes me believe in a future I have no evidence for. He's followed by Godric, who doesn't speak. He just sits, pours his own drink, clinks his cup against yours. Once, a toast without words. You sit together, king, servant, falconer, soldier, in a room that never asks questions. The fire crackles, the bowl's empty, the night deepens. And for a little while, no one talks about kingdoms or decisions or what waits beyond the castle walls. You are just people, breathing, eating, warming your bones beside the fire. And in that quiet, with the crown resting beside you instead of on your head, you feel something rare. Rested. The fire has burned down to thick, glowing coals by the time the others drift off, one by one, like candles snuffed without ceremony. Willett goes first, claiming something about a dream he left unfinished last night. He bows dramatically, nearly trips over the bench, and shuffles off muttering about golden geese and warm ale. Tilda yawns and stands with a grunt, pausing only to take your empty bowl and scowl at how little you ate. Next time I'll pour it down your throat myself. You smile barely. Wouldn't be the first time. She raises an eyebrow. Won't be the last. Then she's gone. Godric remains for a while longer, the way old stones remain after everything else has moved. He doesn't speak, just stares into the coals like they owe him an answer. When he leaves, it's with a quiet nod. No words, just shared understanding, the kind you only get after years of standing in the same storms. Now it sets just you, and the fire, and the crown, still sitting beside you, glinting faintly in the ember light. You pick it up, slowly, turn it over in your hands. It's heavier than it looks, even without the symbolism. Cold gold, set with stones that you're not sure you could name anymore. Once, you stared at this thing like it held all the power in the world. Now, it feels more like a responsibility that never puts itself down. You think about the decisions you made today, the ones you delayed, the ones you dodged. You think about the Duchess and her swans, about the young boy chasing the stick in the courtyard, about the border scroll you still haven't answered, about the woman you nearly married years ago, who didn't want a throne, just a garden. Your life is a chessboard, and most days you're pretending to know which piece does what. You set the crown down again, gently, not out of disrespect, but because you know you'll need it tomorrow, and tomorrow will come. You rise slowly, the bench creaking in protest. Your joints ache. You rub your temple. You tell yourself you'll sleep. But kings rarely sleep. Not really. They rest in pieces, in borrowed hours. You leave the hearth room through the side door, the one the guards forget exists. The corridor is dark, torchlight flickering like it's trying to whisper secrets to the walls. Your footsteps echo, softer now, slower. No one's watching. You don't need to perform. You reach your chambers. The door is slightly ajar. You pause. Listen. Nothing. Just the low hum of castle silence. You step inside. The bed is large, empty, already turned down by hands you didn't see. You sit on the edge. Untie your boots. Exhale through your nose. Your head feels too full and too hollow at the same time. You lie back. Let the dark settle over you. And before you drift off, you whisper to the ceiling, almost amused. Let's see if I get it right tomorrow. Morning finds you the way it always does. Uninvited, a little rude, and entirely too early. You wake before the bell, which is both suspicious and cruel. There's a window high in the corner of your chamber, just enough to let in a sliver of gray light and a draft that seems personally offended by your existence. Your eyes open slowly. You stare at the ceiling beams, waiting to remember who you are today. For one glorious second, you almost forget you're king. Then your foot cramps, your back protests, and your bladder reminds you that royalty has nothing on biology. You sit up with the grace of a sack of barley. The mattress groans. It's been restuffed twice this year and still manages to feel like sleeping on guilt and horsehair. You swing your legs over the side and immediately step on something cold. A scroll, of course. Why wouldn't your nightstand be leaking royal paperwork? You rub your eyes. Something in the corner of your mind is already whispering about unfinished council matters, unresolved land disputes, and that envoy from the Eastern Isles who smells like pickled fish and wants an audience again. You inhale, exhale, swing your shoulders once, twice. The joints pop like kindling. There's a knock at the door. Not loud, not soft, just insistent. It's Anselm. You don't even need to ask. Enter, you mumble, still blinking the world into focus. The boy shuffles in with a tray. Porridge, bread, buttered bread, a single boiled egg, one piece of fruit that looks optimistic about its own freshness. Breakfast, sire, he says, eyes on the floor. He always looks like he expects to be yelled at. You don't yell, you just nod. He sets the tray down carefully like it might explode. He hesitates. Then, the steward says the bishop is waiting. Of course he is. You take the bread, chew slowly and mutter around it. Let him wait. Anselm hesitates again. He wants to say something. You glance up. Out with it. He fidgets. Did you sleep well, Your Majesty? You blink. It's such a normal question it nearly catches you off guard. You nod, slowly. Well enough. He nods too, like that answer matters to him. Maybe it does. He turns to go. Stops again. One of the kitchen boys says there's a cat nesting in the chapel roof. You raise an eyebrow. Is it pregnant or pious? Unclear, he replies seriously. Then he's gone. You finish the bread, leave the egg. You've never liked eggs in the morning? You rise, stretch, and shuffle toward the robe waiting by the fire. You drape it over your shoulders. The crown, for now, stays on the table. You stare at it, let it stare back. And then, quietly, you mutter, "You and I again then." Another day, another roll, another round of pretending you're not as tired as you feel. By the time you reach the throne room, the hall is already alive. Not lively, just alive. Buzzing with voices, papers rustling, boots clacking, and the faint smell of too many bodies trying to act like they didn't just sprint here to be early. The herald announces you in the usual voice, booming, theatrical, about 2 syllables too long on your name. You wonder, not for the first time, if he practices his dramatic pauses in front of a mirror. Probably. You walk the length of the hall slowly. Not out of pride, but because your left knee is sending you warnings. You've stopped trying to disguise the limp. Everyone's seen it. Pretending otherwise just makes them nervous. The throne sits on its raised dais, like it always does, looming cold, built to be more statement than seat. You ease down into it, biting back a wince. The cushion is still too thin, and the carved lions on the arms are still just as judgmental. You adjust your robe, shift your shoulders, pick up the scepter. Everard is already mid-scroll, eyes alight with bureaucratic glee. "First item, sire, the grain merchants of Westmere request a reduced levy, citing the unusually damp spring. They've included samples." You raise an eyebrow. "They sent wet wheat?" He nods. "In a pouch. Slightly moldy." You wave him on. "Tell them I admire their commitment to theatrics." But no. Next, a visiting knight from the south. Sir Elric something, broad-shouldered. Hair like a sunset. The kind of man bards write about because he makes for easy metaphors. He bows, flourishes, and offers you a sword you don't need. "For your glory, sire." You resist the urge to say you already have a drawer full of glory swords, and most of them are decorative. Instead, you nod. "Put it with the others." He offers a tale of slaying a boar the size of a wagon. The court gasps in all the right places. You sip water and pretend not to yawn behind your goblet. The bishop frowns at the mention of blood. You suspect he thinks meat should be blessed before it's hunted, which raises interesting logistical concerns. Next, an old woman from the far western hamlets. No title, no entourage, just a basket of something wrapped in cloth. She curtsies low, lower than she needs to, and presents you with a pie. You blink. "Is this for me?" "For your table, sire," she says, "and your patience. You've not raised taxes in our village in 3 winters. We noticed." You pause. You weren't aware. Not directly. That was someone else's chart. But you nod, and take the pie. It smells like cinnamon and something deeply humble. After she leaves, Everard leans in. "Should I test it for poison?" You glance at him, touch the pie, and I still have you taste every ink bottle in your office. The day drags. There are disputes about grazing rights. One man insists his neighbor's goats are haunted. Someone else presents a poem about tax reform, which is the cruelest thing you've ever had to pretend to enjoy. By the end of it, your throat is dry, your neck aches, and your face has frozen into that half smile you wear when people are watching. You rise. The court bows. You walk slowly back through the hall. And as you exit, tucked beneath your arm, the warm weight of that pie. You don't go straight to your quarters. Not yet. The court disperses behind you like a wave finally hitting the shore, pages scattering with scrolls, guards shifting back to their posts, and nobles peeling off into alcoves to whisper and pretend they're not whispering. Everard follows for a few paces until you slow just slightly. That's enough. He takes the hint and peels off toward his records chamber, no doubt, to alphabetize accusations or file a report on your facial expressions. The pie is still warm. You hold it in both hands, walking slowly down the lesser-used corridor that leads to the old map room. It's one of those spaces no one's touched in years. Too drafty for meetings, too remote for eavesdropping, and full of parchment that smells like history and mildew, which is frankly perfect. The door creaks open, like it's surprised to be used. You step inside. The windows here are tall and narrow, dust streaking the light across the room in pale beams that cut through shadow like forgotten banners. Maps hang on the walls, some curling, some cracked, all out of date. You once ordered someone to update them. They nodded and promptly did nothing. You never followed up. You sort of like them this way. They're honest. You settle into a worn leather chair at the corner table. No ceremony, just a man with a pie in a room full of inaccurate borders. You unwrap it carefully. The crust's a little rough. The filling, a swirl of spiced fruit and something nutty, smells like it was made by someone who didn't rush. You break a piece off with your hands. No plate, no silver fork, no applause. And it's good. Not noble good. Not prepared by a chef who studied under a duke. Good. Just real. Comfort baked into form. The kind of food that doesn't try to impress. It just wants you to feel all right for a little while. You sit there in the silence, chewing slowly, gazing at a map that still shows the kingdom with a lake that dried up 20 years ago. You think about sending someone to fix it, then decide against it. After the second bite, you realize your shoulders are lower, your breathing slower, and no one is asking anything of you. You think of the woman who brought it, the way she said we noticed. You wonder if she'll ever know what that meant to you. A breeze sneaks in through the cracked window. You close your eyes, let it brush past your face, just for a moment. And there, in that half-lit room full of ghost geographies and sweet pastry, you polls you're not the king. You're just a man, eating pie, trying to remember what it felt like to not always be seen. Eventually the pie is gone. Not quickly, not greedily, just steadily, bite by bite, like you were trying to stretch it, as if savoring it could buy you more time in this dusty room at the edge of everything. You set the cloth back over the empty basket with a kind of reverence. More respect than you gave the sword from Sir Elric this morning. Honestly, it deserved it. You lean back in the chair, hands resting on your stomach, eyes on the ceiling. There's a crack in the plaster shaped almost exactly like a wolf or a ship. Depends how tired you are. Today, it's a ship sailing west, probably somewhere warmer. The moment lingers, then it ends. A soft knock, a gentle one, courteous, familiar. You don't answer. You don't need to. The door creaks open a moment later, and Tilda steps in, holding something in one hand and a knowing look in the other. Figured I'd find you here, she says. Not smug, just factual. You always come here when the court's been loud. You grunt. That's about all the commentary you can manage without breaking the spell entirely. She steps further in, looks around. Still haven't set fix that lake on the wall, I see. It sets a historical lake now, you mutter. A memorial to when things were simpler. She smiles faintly and sets a folded cloak down beside you. Evening sits turning cold. Figured you sipped forgotten. You take it. Not because you're cold, because it's one less thing to carry alone. She doesn't leave immediately. She walks once around the room, trailing her fingers along the edge of a warped table, looking at the maps like she used to help draw them. Maybe she did. You know, she says finally, you could tell them to wait. You raise an eyebrow. Who? Everyone, she replies. The council, the bishop, that cousin of yours who keeps writing letters with suspiciously poetic threats. Just make them wait, for once. You sigh. Kings Donstedt get to say no to the clock. She turns, arms folded, head tilted. You do. You just forget that sometimes. You don't reply, because she's right. And because the silence is easier than admitting you need it more than you want to. She walks toward the door, pauses. There's stew in the upper hearth room, and bread that's still warm. If you want it. You nod once. She nods back. Then she's gone. The door closes behind her with a soft click. You sit there a little longer, the folded cloak on your lap, the pie basket beside your elbow, and the maps of the kingdom all around you, wrong, fading, real. The crown waits for you somewhere down the hall. It always does. But for now, you are allowed to sit in a room where no one claps when you enter. The sun has dipped lower by the time you rise. The light has that end-of-day hue now, gold that's turned more copper, like a coin worn thin from too many hands. You stand slowly, the old chair creaking beneath you like it's offering one last complaint. You stretch, hear something in your back shift like a reluctant gate. Then, with one last glance at the cracked ship on the ceiling, you step out of the map room. The corridor outside is quiet, not silent, just respectful, the kind of hush that only happens after sunset, in places made of stone and memory. Your footsteps echo faintly, softened by tapestries that haven't been dusted in a month. You like it this way. The edges of the castle feel older here, more honest, less polished for ceremony. You pass a stained glass window lit from behind by the last of the sky's fire. It casts colors across the wall in a silent parade of saints and symbolism. One figure, some long-forgotten martyr, catches the light just right and throws a red glow onto the floor like a warning. Or maybe just a joke. You're too tired to tell the difference anymore. You make your way toward the upper hearth room, a little-known space, tucked behind the servants' corridor and used mostly by people who've earned the right to sit without being watched. The firelight spills out before you reach the doorway. You pause, one hand on the arch, letting the warmth wash over your face before you even step inside. Inside, the room glows with that particular magic only firelight can make, shadows that flicker like stories trying to be told, and chairs that creak with the kind of welcome that doesn't need words. There's a pot on the hearth, thick stew. You smell garlic, lentils, onion, and something deeply soothing. Tilda wasn't lying. You ladle a bowl without ceremony. There's no audience here, just two guards sitting quietly at the far end of the room, boots off, sipping from pewter mugs. They glance up when you enter, not with fear, not with surprise, just acknowledgement, the way soldiers do when they see someone else who's still carrying it. You settle near the fire, bowl in your lap, robe tucked under your feet. The stew is hot. You let the first spoonful burn your tongue just a little. It's grounding. For several minutes, there's no sound but the crackle of the hearth and the quiet clink of your spoon. No demands, no declarations, no decisions, just heat, just food, just the subtle weight of being alive and not being alone. And when the stew is gone, and your hands are warm again, and your breath feels like it belongs in your own chest, you lean back, stare into the flames, and finally let your shoulders fall. You don't leave the hearth room right away. There's something about this fire tonight, specifically, that feels heavier, not with dread, but with meaning. It crackles and shifts like it knows things, like it remembers the first time you sat in front of it as a young, nervous heir trying not to spill stew down the front of your tunic. You'd had no appetite then, too much weight pressing on your ribs. Now you eat slowly, like the warmth might save you. The guards are gone. One must have nodded off. The other carried him out with a silent glance in your direction, like asking your permission to be human. You gave it without words. You're alone again. But it doesn't feel like solitude. It feels like space. The good kind. You take the poker and shift the logs. Sparks leap upward like startled birds. You stare into them, letting your thoughts move the way your court never allows, wandering, uneven, real. You think about your sister, the one who left for the coast a decade ago with a merchant captain, and a smile too sharp for politics. You never blamed her. You were jealous. If anything, you used to write. She stopped replying. Sometimes you still dream she's living in a village that doesn't know your name, sitting beside a different fire, laughing without consequence. You think about your first sword, not the ceremonial one, the real one, iron dull at the tip, chipped from years of being dropped. It's probably in a storeroom now, buried under silver platters and old war banners. You remember holding it like it meant everything. Now you hold paper and people. You think about the girl in the garden, the one who taught you how to climb the West Tower without being seen. You fell once. She laughed so hard she nearly dropped the apple she was supposed to be stealing. She married someone else. You crowned someone else. It all seems fair, in its own way, but unfair too. The sort of thing that makes you sit longer by the fire, wondering what parts of yourself you bartered away for the sake of being needed. You rest your chin in your hand. The fire is quieter now, just embers, whispering instead of roaring. You like that better. You glance at the bowl, still sitting in your lap, empty. And for a brief, strange moment, you feel grateful. Not for the power, not for the crown, but for this, a warm bowl, a quiet fire. And the freedom, even briefly, to think like a person again. The fire has fallen low, just glowing coals now, deep orange, pulsing, like the breath of something ancient. You don't move yet. It's the kind of warmth that wraps itself around your bones, not just your skin, the kind that makes even sorrow feel softer at the edges. You lean forward, elbows on knees, fingers laced loosely. The empty bowl sits on the bench beside you. There's a smudge on your thumb, maybe ash, maybe ink. You stare at it like it might offer you an answer. It doesn't. Behind you, somewhere down the corridor, a bell rings faintly, not urgent, just timekeeping. The 9th hour after sundown, which means someone, somewhere, is lighting the chapel's final candle. A monk is praying for peace. You'll never feel. A scribe is cataloging decisions you haven't made yet. And someone in the servants' wing is probably sewing a tear in a curtain you didn't know had torn. It's strange, the machinery of it all. How the kingdom moves beneath you like gears you never stop hearing. Even now, even here, your eyes wander to the crown. It's not with you, not physically. You left it in your chambers, resting on a velvet cushion like some glorified bedtime story. But it's still there, in your thoughts, always, pressing. You wonder what people would say if they saw you like this, robe loosened, hair unkempt, shoulders hunched like a man half his age and twice his weight. Not kingly, not polished, just tired, the kind of tired that doesn't fix itself with sleep. And you wonder how many kings before you sat in this exact posture, how many of them gripped the same silence, hoping it would teach them how to be more than ceremonial. You shift in your seat. Something clicks in your back again, a reminder that the body doesn't care about status. It just keeps score. There's a sound in the corridor, footsteps, light. Familiar, you know it's Tilda before she even rounds the corner. She appears in the doorway, holding a folded blanket and a face that doesn't ask questions anymore. She doesn't speak, just walks in, lays the blanket over the bench beside you, and sets a small candle on the table. "Stay here if you want," she says gently. "I told them you were praying." You raise an eyebrow. "They believed that? They wanted to." She shrugs. "Let them." You nod. She starts to turn away, then pauses. The kitchen boys are baking honey bread before dawn. If you come down early enough, they'll pretend not to see you. You smile, faintly. That might be the most sacred offer you've had all week. Then she's gone again, like fog clearing before it's noticed. You look at the candle, you look at the fire, and for a few more minutes, you decide to believe her, that you fear not being watched, that you stir just here, just you, just now. The candle burns low. You haven't touched it, you don't need to. The glow is enough, steady, warm, and just bright enough to make the shadows feel like company instead of threat. You sit back again, slower this time, the blanket Tilda brought draped over your legs like a reminder that someone, somewhere, still sees the man and not just the monarch. The hearth has gone almost completely quiet. No popping logs now, just a bed of coals, smoldering like thoughts you've pushed down all day. You stare into it, watching as one ember pulses brighter than the others, then fades. A moment of fire, gone without ceremony. You wonder how many decisions you made today that no one will remember. How many times you nodded, signed, agreed, just to keep things moving, just to keep the machinery turning. It's strange, isn't it? How many choices feel enormous in the moment, only to be swallowed whole by the next sunrise. You lift your hand slowly, flex your fingers. You used to carry swords with these. Now they carry ink, paper, people. You take a long, steady breath, the kind you used to take before duels, or speeches, or seeing your father. It settles deep in your lungs like warm smoke. You wonder what he think of you now. Your father, that is, the last king. His portrait still hangs in the war chamber, forever scowling like someone just spilled soup on his treaty. He was louder than you, sharper, believed in strong walls and stronger punishments. People feared him, and they obeyed. But no one brought him pies. You lean your head back against the wall, let your gaze drift to the ceiling. There's no wolf shape here, no cracked plaster, just old beams, darkened by age, stretching above you like ribs, like the inside of a creature too large to name. You speak softly, not to anyone in particular, just to the room. I don't know if I'm doing this right. The room doesn't answer. Of course not. But something shifts, not in the air, but in you. Like admitting it, out loud, let a sliver of weight roll off your chest. You stare at the candle. It flickers once, as if to nod. You smile, just a little. Then you reach down, pull the blanket higher, and let your eyes close. Not all the way, just enough to let the world go quiet, just for a bit longer. Because the moment you stand, the kingdom will ask for you again. But for now, you've asked for nothing, and been given peace. You don't remember falling asleep. You just know the fire had faded, and the candle burned low, and then you woke up in the dark. Not the kind of dark that frightens children, the kind of dark that feels like velvet. Soft, complete, honest. The blanket is still around your legs. Your neck aches, your back's angry, and your right hand is asleep from resting too long beneath your weight. But none of that matters, because for once, you slept. Not half alert, not with one eye open for whispers and footsteps and changes in the wind. You slept like a man, not a king. You sit up slowly. The air is cooler now. The embers in the hearth are dull, but still breathing. You stand, groaning softly, and stretch until something in your back decides to surrender. There's no one to see you wince, no one to laugh or worry or offer you a tincture that tastes like boiled dirt and regrets. You glance at the table. The candle's gone out, wax pooled around its base like a collapsed crown, fitting. You pick up the blanket and fold it roughly, not well, just enough to feel like you respected the gesture. You leave it on the bench where you found it. It'll be gone in the morning. Tilda will see to it. She always does. The hall outside the hearth room is nearly silent. One guard posted at the end, half asleep, half ashamed. You walk past him without comment. He straightens, nods, doesn't meet your eye. You don't expect him to. You look tired. You are tired. And there's a strange power in letting people see it now and then. You return to your chambers without fanfare. No procession, no announcement, just your steps and the faint rustle of your robe. The door creaks open at your touch. Inside, the room is exactly how you left it. Crown still resting on the side table. Goblet untouched. Robes laid out for tomorrow by hands that know your habits better than you do. You walk past all of it. You don't light a candle. You pull back the thick covers, heavier than they need to be, and slide into the bed. It's not warm, but it's yours. The mattress gives beneath you grudgingly. You lie back, stare at the ceiling, and you feel it again, that quiet, that weightless moment between one day and the next. The kingdom is still there, the throne, the maps, the questions, all of it waits. But tonight, they can wait a little longer. Because tonight you slept near the fire, and remembered who you were before the crown started whispering. And you didn't disappear. You endured. You wake to the sound of voices outside your door. Muffled, low, urgent but polite, like someone's trying to convince the morning not to be a disaster just yet. You blink slowly, letting the haze of sleep fall away in layers. The stone ceiling above you is pale with early light. The crown on the side table hasn't moved. It never does, which is somehow worse. You sit up, slowly, carefully. Your body makes the same noise as your old war boots, worn, creaky, reliable. The air in the chamber is still, not cold, not warm, just indifferent. There's a knock. Not the quiet kind from someone who wants to be ignored. The kind that means something's already waiting. Enter, you say. Your voice rough as bark. The door opens, and Everard steps in, hair already combed, robe immaculate, scrolls tucked under one arm like he's afraid the information might flee if he lets go. Apologies for the hour, sire. There's steps, been movement on the northern border. Of course there has. You swing your legs out of bed. The floor is cold. It always is. You glance at the basin of water nearby, decide against washing your face with something that feels like it was stored in a glacier. You reach for your robe instead, thick, lined, and already warmed. Someone's been in, early. Maybe Tilda. You make a note to thank her, quietly. Maybe with less sarcasm this time. Everard follows you across the chamber, already unfurling parchment. It's Stot's, not an invasion, he says. Yet. Scouts spotted unfamiliar banners. A few riders. We don't set have numbers. You take the scroll without looking. Let it hang from your fingers while you sit near the hearth. No fire yet, just ash. You poke it once with the iron rod. Nothing stirs, just like you. Everard pauses. Should we recall the captain from the southern road? Pull troops? You finally look up. No, not yet. We watch. Let them wonder if we stire sleeping. He hesitates, then bows and retreats. As always, backward and stiff, like someone who's been taught that the back of the king's head is sacred ground. You sit there for a while, robe drawn tight, scroll unread in your hand. It does not fear. It does not dread. It sits tired calculus. Because you know what happens next. You've seen it play out 100 different ways. A single wrong decision sparks 10,000 funerals. A single delay saves a village, or loses a castle. The crown never tells you which until after. You finally rise. Toss the scroll on the table. Let it wait. You pick up the crown, not because you're ready, but because pretending to be is part of the job. You place it on your head, the weight as familiar as breath now, and when you look into the polished silver tray, used as a makeshift mirror, you see it again, not just a king. A man shaped by obligation, held up by duty, still standing. You leave your chambers with the crown settled on your brow and the robe draped heavy over your shoulders, like it's trying to remind you who you are. The castle's corridors are cooler in the mornings, still waking up, like everything else. Fires haven't been built in every grate yet. The stone breathes cold. Your breath puffs in front of you as you walk, ghost-like. Servants nod and scatter. Guards straighten. Pages press themselves to the walls like nervous ivy. It's not fear. Not exactly. It's that quiet reverence people carry when they've convinced themselves you know what you're doing. You pass by a boy carrying a tray of apples. He drops one when he bows too fast. It rolls toward your foot and stops. You bend slowly and pick it up. You hold it out. He takes it back with shaking fingers. You nod once. That's all it takes. He'll talk about this for a month, like it was a miracle. You keep walking. Down past the tapestry of the Battle of Dunfield, where your great-grandfather is painted beheading 2 men at once. Even though the records show he mostly negotiated and got dysentery. The colors are faded, but the story stays bright. That's the way of these halls. History here is only accurate if it flatters. You reach the council chamber and pause. You always pause. Not for drama, not even for nerves, just to remember. You put your hand against the doorframe, feel the old grooves in the wood. Imagine, just for a heartbeat, that you could walk past it, down the stairs, out the gate, into a day that isn't shaped by decisions and signatures and faces pretending they like you for reasons that start with politics and end in inheritance. But you don't walk past. You never do. You enter, the room rises. They always rise. Even when you're 5 minutes late, even when you're wearing the same robe as yesterday, and your hair looks like you argued with your pillow and lost, you wave them down before anyone starts bowing too hard. Everard clears his throat. The scouts have confirmed the riders were from Garland. No official crest, but their colors match. He hands you another scroll. Their emissary is waiting in the outer court. You glance over the parchment. You already know the script. A veiled threat. A request for land they know they won't get. An apology for accidental trespass. The usual dance. You lower the scroll slowly. Look at your council, at the bishop, already annoyed, at the general, already planning a march, at the treasurer calculating how many horses you can afford to lose without upsetting the market. You say nothing, because in this moment your power is in the pause, and they all know it. The emissary is waiting in the outer court, just as Everard said. You can see him through the archway, tall, overdressed, expression so neutral it almost looks smug. He's flanked by two guards who are clearly more muscle than mind, and behind him stands a scribe with ink-stained fingers and the wary look of someone who knows a poorly chosen word could start a war. You don't approach immediately. You let them wait. A king's silence is more valuable than gold. It costs nothing and buys fear. When you finally step into the sunlit court, the emissary bows just low enough to be considered respectful and just shallow enough to remind you he thinks he sets your equal. Your Majesty, he says, his voice as smooth as oiled leather. What a pleasure to stand in your kingdom again. Again, you repeat, voice calm, eyes fixed. I must have missed your last visit. I assume it went as poorly as this one will. He smiles. It sits a politician, sits smile, all teeth, no warmth. Let sits not waste time. My Lord of Garland seeks peace. You raise an eyebrow. By sending riders across my borders without warning. They were scouts. Defensive precaution. You step closer, just one pace. Enough to make the space shrink. Peace doesn't ride in with steel. It knocks on the gate with open hands. Behind you, someone stirs. The general, probably nodding, like a pleased vulture. The emissary shifts, adjusting his sash. There was no harm meant. No, you say slowly. But there may yet be consequences. That land belongs to farmers who buried their sons under its soil. I ask your lord how many graves he intends to walk over on his way to diplomacy. He flinches, just slightly. A twitch at the mouth. You file it away. He offers a scroll. You take it. Unroll it. Read the same tired lines written in the same tired ink. Promises. Requests. Suggestions disguised as generosity. You scan it, then fold it without ceremony and hand it back. Tell your lord this. He may ride near my land, but he will never ride over it. The scribe looks pale. The emissary, to his credit, doesn't break character. He bows again. I will deliver your message with the grace in which it was received. You smile. Faintly. Try not to trip over the border on your way out. They turn. Leave. No one speaks until they're gone. Only then does Everard clear his throat behind you. A strong stance, sire. You turn to him, a necessary one. And in that moment, under the crisp air and the weight of a crown that somehow feels heavier outside than it does indoors, you remember exactly why they still fear you. Not because you yell, not because you threaten, but because when it matters, you never blink. You stand in the court a moment longer after the emissary leaves, letting the breeze comb through your robe and the silence settle back into place. Your counsel is still nearby, waiting, though none dare speak first. That's the thing about power. It isn't always in what you say. It's in how long others wait for you to say it. Finally, you turn back toward the hall. No further meetings today, you say, voice low but unmistakable. Everard starts to speak, thinks better of it. Nods instead. He's learning. You walk back into the castle, slow and deliberate, every footstep echoing a little louder than it needs to. There's something about the sound of your own gait on these stones that reminds you you never walk for yourself. Not anymore. Every step is measured, watched, remembered. By the time you reach the solar, the adrenaline has ebbed. Your mouth is dry, your shoulders are tight, and the tension in your chest has turned into a quiet, familiar throb. You shut the door behind you and lean against it. It's not the conversation that drained you. It's the pretending, the performance. Being the steel everyone expects, the unblinking crown, the quiet wrath. You did it well, you always do. But every time you do, it costs you something. Small things, quiet things. Bits of softness you've started to forget the shape of. There's a goblet of wine on the table. Someone must have brought it up while you were out there playing king. You sit, drink. It's red, sharp. It's red, sharp. Not the sweet kind, the kind that bites and wakes up parts of your throat that haven't spoken honestly in weeks. You stare at the flames in the hearth. They've already been lit for you. Of course they have. Your life is on rails, prepared, adjusted, anticipated. Even your solitude comes preheated. You close your eyes for a moment. Try to listen for yourself. Not the king, just you. All you hear is a heartbeat. Yours. Slower now. Steady, but worn. There's a knock. Of course there is. Always another knock. You don't answer right away. Eventually, a muffled voice. It sets Tilda. You open the door. She walks in, holding a plate. Bread and cheese, she says simply. You never finished breakfast or lunch. You glance at the plate. It's simple, generous, still warm. I was busy, you murmur. She doesn't argue, just sets it down and pours you a bit more wine. You did well out there, she adds. Didn't yell, didn't flinch. I wanted to, you admit. She shrugs. That's how I knew you were doing it right. You almost laugh. Almost. When she leaves, you sit alone again, plate before you, fire beside you, crown across the room like a pet that doesn't come when called. And in the flicker of the hearth light, you eat. Slowly, quietly, as yourself. The cheese is sharp, the bread's soft at the center, crusted at the edges like a good memory, just tough enough to be real. You eat in the quiet, the kind that doesn't press in too tight but still lets your thoughts wander like they're looking for something they lost. You chew slowly, letting your jaw do something mundane for once. No words, no oaths, just food. The wine helps, though it burns a little more than it should. Maybe that's the point. The fire flickers nearby, casting its gold against the stone walls like it's trying to paint warmth into the room. It's doing a fair job. You catch yourself staring into it again, and suddenly you're somewhere else entirely. The memory comes without permission. A winter banquet, years ago, before the title weighed so heavily. The hall had been decorated with ivy and frostbitten flowers that looked more noble dead than alive. You were seated at the high table, as always, but your eyes kept drifting toward the back, toward her. She wasn't royalty, not even close. A baker's daughter, you think. Or a carpenter's niece. You never found out exactly. She had a laugh like warm cider and eyes that didn't blink when she looked at you. You spoke once, after the feast. Just once. She told you she liked the way you didn't speak unless it mattered. She vanished 3 weeks later. No scandal. No exile. Just gone. You don't even remember what excuse was given. Only that her absence took up more space in your chest than anyone was supposed to. You haven't thought about her in years. But tonight the wine, the fire, the quiet, they open old doors. You sit again, as if the burn might blur the edges of memory. It doesn't. You push the plate away gently, not because you're full, but because the ache in your throat has nothing to do with hunger. The crown sits on the far table still, watching, always watching. You wonder how many kings have had nights like this, where they could taste what it meant to be alone, even while surrounded by loyalty. You rise from your chair, walk to the tall window, and look out. The courtyard is empty now. The torches burned low. The wind moves softly through the trees like it's humming a tune too old to name. You lean your forehead against the cold glass and close your eyes. The room is still. The kingdom sleeps. And for the first time in a long time, you let yourself miss something. Someone, a face you barely remember, and a version of yourself you haven't seen in years. You stay by the window longer than you meant to. The stone sill is cold beneath your hands, grounding. Below, the castle courtyard lies wrapped in silver shadow, moonlight stretching across the cobbles like silk someone forgot to gather. One torch flickers stubbornly near the gate, doing its best to hold off the dark. You know that feeling. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once, then silence again. You pull away from the glass, breath fogging the pain, and return to the fire. The plate's still there, one last corner of bread untouched. You pick it up without thinking, chew slowly, and find that somehow it tastes better in the quiet. Or maybe you're just noticing it more. You sit again, not in your chair of state, just the one by the fire, the one that doesn't care about posture or titles. The crown is still across the room. You haven't worn it since earlier today, but your neck still feels its shape. It's always there, even when it's not. You wonder if you left it behind one day, just walked out of the gates in a hooded cloak with no ring, no retinue, no name. How long would it take for anyone to find you, to realize you were gone? Would they send a search party? Or a replacement? You shake your head, as if that might shake loose the thought. The logs shift in the hearth, a soft pop, like a whisper breaking. You think of the northern emissary again, the practiced smile, the scroll of rehearsed civility. He'll ride home tonight or tomorrow and report to his lord that the king still has teeth, still knows how to look down without blinking. You did what you were supposed to, but no one will mention the moment you sat alone in this room, nursing wine and ghosts, wondering how a man can be feared by thousands and still feel forgotten. The door creaks slightly, not opening, just moving with the draft. You glance at it like you're expecting someone, but no one comes. You pull your knees closer, cloak wrapped tight. Your eyes flicker to the candle stub, barely holding on, wax pooled like a sleeping thought. It'll go out soon, and when it does, you till sleep. Not because you want to, but because you have to. Because in the morning they still knock again, and you still rise, and wear the steel in your spine like it was forged for you. But for now, you just sit, and let the night be what it is, soft, honest, and unafraid of kings. The candle gives up at last. No dramatic flicker, no heroic final breath, just a quiet surrender into darkness, the wick curling into itself like it's tired of trying to be light. You watch it fade. You don't relight it. The fire in the hearth has shrunk too. Coals now, nothing more, breathing slow and red like a tired heart. The warmth still lingers in the stones, but the chill of the castle has crept in under the doors, over the flagstones around your ankles. You stand, groaning softly as you stretch. Your bones sound like distant drums, deep and familiar. You pull the cloak tighter around your shoulders, not because you need it, but because it's comforting. It feels like a shield made of fabric and memory. You carry the crown in your hand as you leave the room. You don't wear it, not now. Not at this hour when everyone's asleep and the kingdom forgets, just for a while, who it belongs to. You carry it the way a priest carries a relic, not for show, but because the weight feels earned. The hallways are dark, just torchlight here and there, flickering like nervous thoughts. You walk slowly, not because you're weak, but because the silence invites it. Your feet know the way. They've done this 1,000 times. Back to your chambers, back to the room where the day always ends, and the next one already waits. When you enter, the fire has been lit. Small, neat, obedient. A servant must have come while you were in the court, or the solar, or staring out at things that don't belong to you anymore. The bed is turned down, the sheets crisp, the air faintly scented with rosemary and sleep. You set the crown down on its usual place, next to the basin, above the worn wood of your writing desk, beside a sealed letter you've never opened. You sit on the edge of the bed, slowly remove your boots, flex your toes. For a brief moment, you let your head fall into your hands. The room doesn't judge you. The walls are too old for that. They've seen worse. Then, without ceremony, you lie back. The mattress sinks beneath your weight. The ceiling waits. And eventually, finally, your eyes close. You don't dream of war, or banners, or negotiations in stone halls. You dream of fog in the orchard, of soft dirt under bare feet, of someone laughing far away, and of waking up not as a king, but just as someone who remembers what it's like to belong to no one. Morning returns not as a sunrise, but as sound. Footsteps outside your door, the soft rustle of fabric. Someone placing wood into the hearth with the same reverence they'd give a sleeping lion. You hear a kettle being set down, a match struck, Then silence again. They're waiting, always waiting. You don't to open your eyes yet. You lie still for a while, letting your breath settle into the old rhythm. You know what happens the moment you move. The day begins. The crown tightens. The questions start. And the quiet, this precious quiet, vanishes like mist touched by sun. But eventually, you do move. You shift, stretch, hear your shoulder crack like an old door. You open your eyes. The fire is lit. The room is warmer than expected. The basin's been filled. Steam curls upward from the surface. You sit up slowly, pulling the blanket with you. You stare at the fire for a moment. No thoughts, just light. Then the knock comes. 3 soft raps. Anselm sips, rhythm, timid but dependable. Your Majesty? You answer with a grunt. He opens the door a hand's width, enough to slide in with a tray. Bread, porridge, 2 figs, a small pot of something that might be tea or punishment. He sets it down, doesn't speak. He knows better now. He hovers a second longer. You finally glance up. He swallows. You didn't call for your attendance last night. We thought I was warm where I was, you say. He nods, eyes wide. He thinks that's a secret, that you have a hiding place in your own castle. You let him believe it. Some truths are too strange to explain. As he turns to leave, he pauses. Should I polish the crown this morning? You look at it, still sitting where you left it. A little askew, like even it's tired of pretending. No, you say. Let it rest today. He blinks. Yes, Your Majesty. The door clicks shut behind him. You pour the tea. It is, unfortunately, punishment. You take a bite of the bread. It's good, fresh, still warm in the center. You think of the baker, already up for hours, hands dusted in flour, working without knowing who he's feeding. You think too of the hundreds of people doing the same, shoveling, stitching, mending, herding, cooking, cleaning, all without applause, all without crowns. And yet here you are, eating their labor under soft linen, with a robe that costs more than their barns. You feel the weight of that, quietly. You eat the second fig, slower. And you decide, just for today, to walk through the lower halls, to be seen where you stir rarely expected, because sometimes a king should not look down from the tower, but walk through the kitchen and thank the hands that keep him standing. You don't announce your visit. You don't wear the robe with the silver trim. You don't bring guards. You don't even tell Everard. If you had, he'd have followed you with a ledger and 3 scrolls for you to sign while you were mid-bite of an apple. No, today you walk alone, and softly. The lower halls hum with life, not ceremony, not performance, just honest work. You pass a linen room where 2 women are folding sheets the size of sails. They don't see you at first. When they do, they both freeze. One drops a corner of cloth. You hold up a hand, slow, easy, carry on. They glance at each other, unsure if you mean it. You keep walking. The kitchen corridor smells of yeast and onions and life. You follow it like someone tracing an old trail in the woods. You remember these halls, years ago, before the throne, when you were still a prince and not yet a promise. You duck beneath a low beam, brush past a curtain, and step into the heat and noise of the main kitchen. Chaos, in its purest form. Pots clanging, water boiling, bread being slapped into shape. A young girl rushing past with an entire wheel of cheese like it's a sacred artifact. You step aside just in time. She doesn't even look up. And then someone does. The head cook, a barrel-chested man named Garrick, spots you from across the room. He goes stiff. Mouth opens, probably to shout something like "Clear the hearth." The king's here. You shake your head once. Firm, quiet. He closes his mouth. You walk past the fire pit, where a stew is bubbling hard enough to solve national issues. You stop beside a table where a boy is peeling turnips, like he's being punished for crimes in another life. You reach down, pick one up, examine it like it sets a rare gem. Is this your first batch? The boy stares up, wide-eyed. Yes, Your Majesty. You nod. You missed a spot. He looks like he might faint. You grin barely and keep walking. You don't stay long, a few minutes, enough to be seen, not as the crown but as the person beneath it, a face, a body, a man who breathes the same smoke, walks the same floor, hears the same clatter of work done without thanks. On your way out, Garrick sidles up to you, with a warm, round loaf wrapped in cloth. Baked this morning, he says, voice gruff with pride. No spices, just flour, water, hands. You take it, the best kind. He nods once, deeply, then turns back to his ovens. You carry the bread under your arm as you return to the upper halls, through the stone stair past the forgotten door, and back into the part of the castle where kings are expected to exist. When Everard finds you later, he'll ask where you've been. You'll say you were inspecting the foundation. And for once, it be a lie. By the time you return to the council chamber, the mood has already begun to ferment. Everard is pacing, scroll in hand, eyes flashing like a man who's been rehearsing disappointment for the past half hour. The bishop sits nearby with his hands folded, perfectly still in the way only holy men and politicians can manage. The steward whispers something to a page, and the page runs off like his boots are on fire. You step through the doorway holding a warm loaf of bread. Everyone stops talking. Everard turns toward you with a sigh. So theatrical, it could be sold as a sermon. Sire, we've been waiting. I know, you say. You walk past him unhurried and take your seat at the head of the long worn table. You set the bread beside the usual stack of dispatches like it belongs there. He blinks at it. That is bread. Correct, you say, reaching for a knife. Would you like some? No, thank you, he replies stiffly. Like you just offered him a rat. We have matters of state. We always do. You cut a thick slice, steam curling from the middle like a quiet prayer. You tear off a piece and chew, slowly, while they all watch you like they're waiting for a lesson. You begin, mouth full of honesty. We spend all day talking about grain, tonnage, yield, storage, levy, but none of you have tasted the bread made from it this week. The bishop clears his throat. That sip's not our role, your majesty. It should be, you say, not unkindly. You offer a piece to the steward. He hesitates, then accepts, takes a bite, looks surprised. You nod. Then you get down to business. You listen as Everard recites the latest movement reports from Garland, as the bishop campaigns for more silver to expand the monastery's walls, as the treasurer warns of shortages in the southern markets. You listen, tearing bits of bread, sharing a few, eating quietly. It grounds you. It quiets the part of you that wants to drift into fury or fatigue. You speak less than usual, but when you do, it lands like iron. Because sometimes the man who eats humbly commands louder than the man who shouts from a throne. By the end of the session, half the bread is gone, and the tension in the room has thinned like fog in spring. As they file out, the steward glances back at the remaining slice. You nod once. He takes it. When the room is empty again, you sit in the quiet and brush the crumbs from your robe. And for the first time in a long time, you feel like a king who did something real. Not grand, not golden, just real. After the council chamber clears, you don't go to your quarters. You don't go to the war room or the chapel or the garden where the roses bloom too perfectly for anyone to believe they're not enchanted. You take the long corridor, the one with uneven stones and a ceiling that leaks when it rains, and you turn left through the narrow wooden door that most people think leads to a storage closet. It doesn't stop. Not anymore. It leads to the old library. There's no ceremony in the room, no polish. The shelves bow in the middle, like even they're tired. Scrolls and leather-bound ledgers sit in loose piles, spines cracked, pages stained by years of unwashed hands, and candle wax. There's dust here, real dust, the honest kind that settles where no servants dare interrupt. And that's why you love it. You walk through slowly, running your fingers along the edge of a table covered in stacked atlases, maps of the world as it was, or was imagined depending on the cartographer's wine intake. One map shows a sea that doesn't exist. Another places dragons in the western hills. You sit in the corner chair, the one no one else uses because it leans slightly left. You like that. Perfection makes you nervous. You don't reach for a book right away, you just sit. Let the weight of silence press in. Let it wrap itself around your bones like a cloak that doesn't care who you are, only that you're here. There's a small window high in the wall. Sunlight sneaks through it like it's embarrassed to be seen. The beam lands on a volume sitting open. The Lineage of Lords. You lean forward, glance at the page. It lists your name. Not in bold, not in reverence. Just a name, a date, a line. You stare at it, a little stunned at how small it looks. How little ink is needed to define a life. One line, a dot, between kings. You wonder what they'll write about you when you're gone. Will they mention the swan incident, the bread, the night you sat by the hearth and said nothing for hours? Probably not. They'll say you ruled wisely, or that you kept the border steady. Maybe they'll use the word just, a heavy word, when written too lightly. You lean back again, close your eyes for a moment. There's a smell in here you can't name. Old paper, ink, time maybe. You inhale deeply, and then you speak, softly, just to yourself. I hope they say I listened, because not all kings are remembered for the wars they win. Some are remembered for the ones they didn't start. You don't move for a long time. The quiet in the library is a different kind of quiet. It's not the stillness of a throne room between declarations. It's not the silence of a sleeping castle. It's older. It hums. Like everything in here is remembering something but refusing to say it aloud. Your eyes drift back to the open book. The page doesn't change, of course, but the way you feel about it does. There's something sharp about seeing your life summarized so cleanly, so completely, as if a reign could be summed in a margin note and ink that dries in seconds. You rise slowly, stretch, feel the ache behind your ribs. That always comes when you've been too still for too long. You walk to the desk in the corner, the one no one uses anymore. On top of it, a small stack of letters tied with fraying twine. Most are official. You can tell by the wax seals, the ribbon colors, the stiff parchment that crackles like ambition when bent. But one is different. No seal, just folded parchment. No name on the outside. You stare at it for a second too long. You pick it up. It Stutz, the letter. The one you never opened. The one you found months ago tucked in a drawer in your old traveling satchel. The one with handwriting you knew instantly, even after all these years. Her handwriting. You don't sit. You stand by the window. Unfold it. Let your fingers move slow, not with hesitation, but with something quieter. Respect, maybe, or regret. The ink has faded, but the words are clear. You read them all. She wrote of the coast, of how the salt air had finally let her lungs loosen, how her hands were rougher now but her sleep was softer. She thanked you for not chasing her, for letting her leave. She said the world was quieter without your voice in it, but not colder. She said she remembered the apple, the tower, the way you looked before the crown started to shape your face into something unreadable. And then, a line that hooks itself into your chest like an arrow, meant to wound gently. You were never meant to be only a king. I hope you remember the part of you that knew how to climb. You fold the letter, slowly, carefully. You set it back on the desk. And you stand there for a moment, hands braced on the wood, shoulders low, eyes closed. You remember the tower, the way the stone scraped your palms, the way she laughed when you slipped, the way you laughed too, even as you fell. You breathe. And in that breath, something inside you loosens. Not enough to change everything, but enough to change the next hour. You leave the library without telling anyone. No one sees you slip back through the narrow door. No one hears the soft click of the latch behind you. For once, you move like a man without an audience, shoulders down, footsteps light, the letter still folded neatly in your palm. You don't take the usual path back. Instead, you follow the older halls, the ones no one uses unless something's leaking or broken. You pass under low arches, step over a half-loose stone you've known about for 20 years, and duck into the side stairwell where you once stole an hour of quiet after your father died. The castle is different here, less polished, less proud. The stones are rougher, the air cooler, the stories older. No one curtsies in these halls. No one bows. And maybe that's why you keep walking them. They let you remember. By the time you reach your quarters again, the sun has moved, tilting its light through the windows in a long golden spill across the stone floor. The fire is out. The robe you tossed over the chair earlier is still there, wrinkled, half-folded, perfectly disobedient. You sit at your writing table and place the letter in a drawer, not to hide it, just to keep it safe. You stare out the window for a while, not seeing much of anything. A bird cuts the sky. A leaf falls past the glass. A guard shifts on the wall walk below, unaware of you watching him. It's peaceful, but temporary. There steps a knock at the door. Always, always the knock. You don't get answer right away. Eventually a voice, "Sire, the captain of the guard requests audience." You close your eyes. It sets always urgent. You rise, slowly. Let your hands rest for a moment on the desk. Then you open the drawer again and look at the letter one more time, not to read it, just to feel its weight. Then you close the drawer, pick up the crown, and place it back on your head. Not because you want to, but because there's still a kingdom waiting, and you have remembered who you were. Which means maybe you haven't lost who you are. You walk toward the war room like you've done 100 times before. The hallways feel longer today, not heavier, just slower, as if the castle itself knows you're carrying something different now, something quieter. The kind of memory that doesn't shout but lingers like the smell of wood smoke on old fabric. When you enter, the captain is already standing by the map table. His hands are behind his back. His boots are muddy. That tells you more than anything written on parchment. "Sire," he says, bowing with a nod more than a flourish, "we have word from the Eastern Post." You don't ask. Not yet. He places a letter on the table. The wax seal's broken. The edges are damp, frayed, written hard. You read it without picking it up. Bandits. 3 villages raided. Livestock taken. 2 guards killed. 1 child missing. You close your eyes for a breath. Long and low. You let the weight of it land. When you speak, your voice is steady. "How many men at the outpost?" 17, he replies. You nod. "Too few." He doesn't disagree. He's been trying to tell you that for weeks. You just weren't listening. Not really. You step around the table and mark a location with your finger. Send 2 riders ahead. Deliver supplies, blankets, bread, not just swords. Let them feel the crown before they see it. The captain straightens, but his expression softens. "I still see to it personally." You meet his eyes. Good. You dismiss him with a nod, but before he turns he says something you weren't expecting. "You seem different today, sire." You tilt your head. "Different?" "Not softer," he says, "but clearer." You say nothing, because maybe he sets right. And maybe you needed to see your name in ink, to be reminded that one day this crown will pass to someone else, and all that will remain is how you chose to wear it. The captain leaves. The door closes. You lean on the map table, staring at a kingdom drawn in charcoal lines and ink that started to crack from age. You touch the place where the raids happened, just a smudge on parchment, but out there it's fire. It's fear. It's a child who hasn't come home. You roll the map up slowly, and for the first time in a long time, you don't feel like a man balancing duty and survival. You feel like a king trying to be better than the day before. You leave the war room not with urgency, but with intention. There's a difference. Urgency scatters. Intention gathers. Today your feet know where to go before your mind catches up. Down through the archway, past the old training yard, past the courtyard where pigeons seem to stage daily coups, past the stables, where a black mare stamps her hooves like she knows something you don't. You stop just before the gates. Not the main ones. The side gate. The one used by merchants, stable hands, and servants, carrying baskets of laundry that smell like lavender and coal. A few guards linger there, not in polished armor but in worn leather and patience. You nod to them. They let you pass without a word. Outside, the road bends through the lower town, and it's loud in the best way. Pots clanging, boots in puddles, chickens daring fate, and children arguing about a stone one of them insists is magical. You walk among them like smoke, familiar, but not always seen. A baker pauses mid-gesture. As she stirs a cauldron of something thick and fragrant, she squints. Is that the king? Someone beside her scoffs. Kings don set walk without trumpets. You pass them without saying a word. Not because you stir ignoring them, because today you just want to watch. At the edge of the market, an old man is mending a cartwheel. His hands shake slightly, but his focus is unbroken. You crouch down beside him. No one notices for a moment. He offers no bow, just a grunt and a quiet, "Can't set find good wood for these spokes anymore." You glance at the wheel. "Have you tried using ashwood?" He side-eyes you. "And what would you know about carts then?" You smile, just barely. "Enough." He chuckles, and it sets the kind of laugh that sets too old to flatter. "Well, then, maybe you should come back tomorrow and help me lift the axle." You rise, brushing dirt from your knee. "Maybe I will." You continue through the street, slow and deliberate. The people begin to notice, not with fear, not with reverence, just surprise. And then nods, small, uncertain, but real. They don't shout, they don't kneel, they just nod. And something in your chest unclenches. Because this quiet presence might be the truest power you've ever had. Not ruling from above, but standing among them. The path winds past the smithy, where hammers strike in rhythm with the heartbeat of the town. Sparks fly in small bursts, catching the morning light like tiny rebellions. You pause just outside the open stall. The blacksmith is a broad-shouldered woman named Brina, with arms thicker than most men's legs and a scowl that could temper steel on its own. She doesn't look up right away. She's working, focused, wrapping leather around a hilt. The kind of focus that only comes when your hands know exactly what they're doing and your thoughts are somewhere far from politics. "Looks balanced," you say, voice soft enough not to startle. She glances up. A flicker of recognition crosses her face, but she doesn't bow. She doesn't just says, "If it wasn't I wouldn't be wasting my time on it." You nod. That sips Brina. She finishes the hilt, sets the blade on the rack, then finally meets your gaze. You stir walking alone today. "I am." That Seps knew. It is. She wipes her hands on a cloth that used to be white and leans against the anvil. "My boy joined the guard last spring. You remember? Curly-haired, tall as me when he stands up straight." You nod. "I remember. I saw him on patrol last week. Looked proud." She smiles, just a little. "He is." Still asks if you ever notice him. "I just did." Her smile grows by a breath. He subtle brag about that for a month. You leave her to her forge. The sound of hammering picks up again as you walk on. Steady now. Every footstep feels less like movement and more like conversation. Every glance you share with a merchant or a mason feels like it carries something unspoken, not obligation. Connection. You stop at a small well where 3 children are playing a very serious game involving a pebble, a rope, and 1 chicken, who refuses to play by the rules. One of them stares at you openly. "Are you the real king?" You crouch down. "Depends. Does your king eat bread and forget names sometimes?" She thinks about this. "I think so." "Then yes," you say. She nods solemnly. "Good. Because the other one we pretend is always shouting." You laugh, and it's not a royal laugh. It's not poised or timed or polished. It's just yours. As you rise and continue your walk back toward the castle gates, your hands feel looser, your jaw unclenched, your heart not lighter. No, not that, but steadier. Because sometimes the kingdom isn't the banners or the battles or the maps in the war room. Sometimes it's a boy in armor who wonders if you saw him, a blacksmith who keeps her pride in silence, a child by a well, asking if you purr real. And your answer every day you wear that crown is to be. The castle gates loom ahead, tall and shadowed in the afternoon light. The guards at the entrance straighten when they see you approach, hands to hilts, backs to stone. You nod once, no commands, no ceremony, just a silent return. They open the gate without a word. You step through, and the change in air is immediate. Cooler, quieter, more stone than sky. The castle swallows sound differently than the town. It folds it inward, presses it into corners. You're used to it, but today it feels sharper, cleaner, like you're hearing it all for the first time. You don't go straight to the solar, or the council hall, or the chamber where they'll have laid out fresh documents, pressed robes, and questions with no answers. You go to the garden, the inner one, hidden behind 2 old towers and a hedge. No one's trimmed in months. It's quiet here, not by design, just by neglect. The vines are winning, the benches are cracked, but the sunlight still finds its way in, and sometimes that's enough. You sit on the low stone wall near the fountain. It no longer flows, not since the drought last year, but the basin still holds rainwater and the occasional feather from a passing bird. You pull something from your pocket, a crumb of bread. You crumble it between your fingers and drop it into the water. A moment passes. Then a ripple. Then, from beneath the water's surface, the flash of silver. The fish are still here. Small, old, stubborn, survivors in a fountain, forgotten by everything except them. You watch them for a while, and you think not of war, or alliances, or emissaries, or the cousin who writes in veiled threats. You think of the girl by the tower, the child at the well, the boy on patrol, and you say softly, not to be heard, not even to yourself exactly, I tell stay, not because you have to, but because someone must, and maybe because you're starting to remember how evening approaches with long shadows and soft gold pooling across the garden walls. The sun's descent feels slower than usual, as if it too is reluctant to hand over the day. You sit there by the fountain for longer than you should. No one comes to find you. No messenger dares interrupt. Perhaps they've finally learned, or perhaps someone told them the king was where he needed to be. The fish circle the rainwater like old thoughts, quiet, repetitive, persistent. You trace one with your eyes until it vanishes under the lily leaves, and you wonder how many people in this castle even know they're still here. You stand slowly, joints stiff but not aching the way they used to. Something about today has eased that. No healer, no poultice, just walking, talking, being among the people who keep the place alive while you sit in rooms and sign your name on things. You walk back through the garden path with slower steps now, not because you're tired, but because you don't want to miss anything. A single violet blooms beneath the ivy. You crouch down, touch the petal gently. A color so small, so bold, so completely unnecessary, and yet it's here, thriving. You make a note to leave the ivy alone. Back inside, the castle lights are beginning to glow. Candles lit in corners, lanterns swinging gently from hooks. You pass 2 servants whispering in the corridor. They fall silent when they see you. Eyes wide, mouths half-formed around the gossip they'll never admit to. You smile. Let them wonder. You're not angry. Let them speak of you in ways that feel real. You reach the stairwell, up toward your chambers. But instead, you turn left toward the solar, toward the fire that's already burning, toward the plate that's probably waiting, and the wine you're no longer drinking to forget. Tilda is there, as expected. She doesn't speak when you enter. She's placing a folded letter on your desk. Likely another request, another complaint. You nod. She doesn't ask where you've been. She knows better. She glances at your boots. Muddy, scuffed. She smiles. Was it worth the walk? You sit. Ease into the chair like it was shaped for your back alone. More than worth it. She pours the tea. Not wine. Not tonight. You take the cup. Hold it between your palms. The heat is a quiet kind of strength. You sip. It sips bitter, but clean. She steps toward the door, pausing only once. They missed you today. You nod. Let them. Will you go back tomorrow? You glance at the fire. I think I tell go earlier. And as she closes the door, and the castle exhales around you, you let yourself feel it. The weight of the crown is still there, but for the first time in a long time, it feels like it's sitting on someone who knows why they wear it. The fire in the solar burns low now, casting amber ribbons across the stone floor. You've moved your chair closer, not out of cold but instinct. There's something about sitting near flame that reminds you of your father. He never lit it himself, always had someone do it, but he stared into it often, like he expected it to speak first. You never understood that as a child. Now, you do. The tea cools in your hands. You don't drink it. You just hold it like something tethering you to the moment. The flames pop and settle. A log collapses inward with a sigh, sending up a brief shower of sparks. Across the room, the crown still rests on the desk. You haven't worn it since morning, and you don't need to now. Tonight isn't about being king. Not out loud, not in marble or decree. Tonight is about the choices no one sees, the ones no bard sings about, the kind made with quiet hands and open eyes. You walk to the desk and pick up a quill. The paper is blank. You don't write a command. You write a letter. It starts simple, to the boy in the guard who stands a little straighter than the rest. Then another, to the baker with the crooked smile and flower on her sleeves. And another, to the girl at the well who asked if I was real. The words aren't royal. They aren't grand. They're honest. Small truths, glimpses, reminders of what you saw, of what they are, of what you're trying to become. Each letter folds into itself like a secret, like a gift. You stack them neatly. Tomorrow you'll ask Tilda to deliver them quietly, without fuss, no seal, no name. Just a king remembering his people. Just a man trying not to forget again. You return to the fire. Sit back down. Let the heat climb your legs and rest across your chest. You close your eyes. And in that warmth, something settles. Not peace, not yet, but purpose. And that sits enough, because tomorrow will come. And with it the questions, the noise, the iron weight of expectation. But you tell me that not as the man they think you are, but as the one who finally remembered how to listen. The fire burns down to its final breath. There's nothing left to say tonight. No orders to give, no signatures to place. The letters are written, the halls are silent. The kingdom sleeps, and for once it does so without needing your voice to keep it from breaking. You stretch once, slowly, carefully. The ache in your spine is the kind you welcome. It means you moved today. Not just across rooms, but towards something real. You stand wrapping your robe around yourself like armor for a different kind of night. No metal, no blade, just fabric, memory, intention. You walk to the window and look out one last time. The sky is endless. Stars blink against the black like quiet oaths. Below, the town rests under that same sky, roof to roof, hearth to hearth, life stacked beside life like a mosaic. Only you get to see from here. You don't look down with ownership. You look down with weight, with awe, with the understanding that these people, these stories, these ordinary names are what hold the walls of this place together. Not the throne, not you, them, always them. You turn from the window. The room behind you waits. The bed is turned down, the fire low, and the crown still on the desk. You could leave it there tonight, but you don't set. You walk to it, lift it with both hands, not out of obligation, out of respect. You place it on the stand beside your bed, not on your head, not tonight. Tonight the crown rests too. You lie down, let your body sink into linen and silence. You exhale. Not the breath of a ruler, the breath of someone who has finally truly arrived in his own skin. You close your eyes, and tomorrow when the knock comes, you tell answer it. Not as a burden, not as a symbol, but as a man who remembers every name the crown tried to make him forget. And that is how a kingdom endures, and that is how a king becomes real.